what we're doing this week. Let me just make sure it's recording. All right, so this week we are going to talk about section 3.1 in class, and then on your own this week I want you to watch the video. It's linked in D2L. It's called Introduction to Truth Tables. It's only 12 minutes long, and that'll prepare you for our class next week. Truth tables are a topic that people traditionally struggle with in this class. It's usually one of the more difficult topics, and so I just first of all, I wanted to cover it with you together in class, but I wanted you to have seen a truth table before, and seen the rules for truth tables before, so that we can do more difficult examples when we're together in class. So just make sure and watch that video before you return to class next week. And then don't forget, if you have your practice exam work, you can bring it up and put it on this table before class ends. If you have it but you didn't bring it with you, you can just take a picture of it and send it to me, and I'll give you the bonus points. I'll get those added in after class today. All right, so we're starting the Unit 2 material today. So this is the start of the Unit 2 material.
Do you have the notes for it?
Print it out? No, I didn't print it out. I just did that for the last section because it was a lot of writing. This one's not too bad. It's very short. So chapter 3 is called Logic. Logic is a branch of mathematics. This will just be a brief survey of logic that we'll cover in this class. But if you like this kind of stuff, they have a whole class in logic in the math department. They also have a logic class in the philosophy department. This section is called Logic Statements and Their Negations. This will just be really an introduction to the symbols that we use in logic. There's 4 symbols. We'll talk about what a statement is. We'll talk about how to negate statements. And then we'll talk about some connective words that we can use to connect statements. All right, so the first thing I want you to write down is just this definition here. I'm going to highlight the important parts. It says a statement is a complete sentence that asserts a claim that's either true or false, but not both. So it's a complete sentence that's either true or false, but not both. Statements are not opinions, and they're not questions. All right, so statements are not opinions and they are not questions. I typically put a question like number 1, something sort of similar to number 1 on the test. You can see some of my formatting got messed up. Let me adjust this. Okay. Okay. So like I said, typically I put a question on the test sort of similar to number 1, just because it's usually a pretty easy one. So we'll highlight this. So that's a good one for the test, for our Unit 2 exam. I don't think I'm going to make you do the written work next time. It would be too much work. But it'll be optional if you want to submit your written work for I can look at it and possibly give you partial credit. It'll be an option next time, but it won't be required. All right, so the question says, determine if the following sentences are statements. And then we have statements A, B, C, and D. Typically, we will refer to statements by a lowercase letter. And that way we can just refer back to them later without having to rewrite the whole sentence. All right, so statement A says it is raining outside. Or excuse me, not statement A, but sentence A says it is raining outside. Sentence B says beaches are the most beautiful place to vacation. Sentence C says today is Monday. And then D says today is Thursday and tomorrow is Monday. All right, so let's just recall statements have to be complete sentences. They have to be either true or false, but not both. And they're not opinions, and they're not questions. All right, so what about A? Is that a statement? It is raining outside. Yes, that is a statement. So yes, that is a statement. What about B? Beaches are the most beautiful place to vacation. No, that is an opinion. So we'll say no, not a statement. What about C? Today is Monday. Yes, it's false. It's not currently Monday, but that's okay. Statements are allowed to be false. So today is actually Thursday. So this is still a statement, even though it's false. All right, and then what about the last one? Today is Thursday, and tomorrow is Monday. All right, so this part is true, right? And then this part is false. So it's not a statement. Right, it can't be true and false at the same time. So this is not a statement. So typically in the test, what I do is I'll give you 4 options and I'll say like select which of the following options is a statement. And it'll be like a statement, a question, an opinion, and maybe something like this, something that's true and false at the same time. So that's what you can expect to see on the test. All right, now negations. I'll highlight the important parts and the stuff I think you should write down. The negation of a statement is the logical opposite of that statement, or its denial. Negations always have the opposite truth value of the original statement. And then this table is really helpful. So this is helpful for negating statements. Some statements are really easy to negate. Sometimes you can just insert the word not into a statement and that negates it. When you have these quantifiers in a statement, like all the dogs are brown, those are a little bit harder to negate. So this table just helps you negate statements that involve quantifiers like all are, some are, and none are. Yeah, they were hard on the homework. I didn't realize how hard they were. I actually went and took them off. So I thought they were. Yeah, and a lot of the options looked very similar. So don't forget as we go through here to just, think about stuff that you might want to write on your index card for the next test. Oh, and if you haven't thrown your index card away yet, I think it's a good idea to keep up with all your index cards. That way, at the end of the semester, if you have to take the final, you kind of have like a list of everything that was important for every test to help you study. And I'll do the index card on the final too. It seems like it makes people feel more comfortable to have the index card. All right, so if you have something like all dogs are brown, you could negate that statement by saying any one of these. You could say not all dogs are brown, some dogs are not brown, or at least one dog is not brown. The negation of the quantifier some are would be none are. Like some of the flowers are pink. The negation of that would be none of the flowers are pink. The negation of some are not would be all are. And then the negation of none are, you could use either one of those. There's at least one that is, or some are. So like if you said something like, none of the cars are hers, the negation of that would be some of the cars are hers, or there's at least one car that is hers. All right, so nothing you need to have, necessarily memorized, but just a helpful table for negating statements. All right, so let's look at some examples of negating statements. We'll talk about how you can sometimes just read the statement and see if you can insert the word not and see if that would negate it. And then sometimes we'll have to use this table. All right, so here we have 4 statements. So negate the following statements. The statement A says Melanie is wearing a red raincoat. The statement B says the door is not closed. Excuse me. Statement C says none of the tourists brought raincoats. And then I think the last one is probably the hardest one. Statement D says I run less than Kara. So all these by themselves are not terribly difficult to negate. But when you combine things, like for example, when you combine things like this word none in a statement with this word not, like there was one example in the homework that said something like, none of the cats are not sleeping. And it takes you a second to think about what is that even saying? So they're not terribly difficult when they're on their own, but when you combine these quantifiers, it makes it a little bit more difficult. Now, talking about negations, I need to tell you what the symbol is for negations. So we have a special symbol for negations. It looks like this. It's like a little squiggle. We read this as not. Like, so for example, we would write a little squiggle and then A. That would mean not A, or the negation of A. So what would be the negation of the statement A? Yep. So that's one where you can just easily insert the word not. Melanie is not wearing a red raincoat. Now, in the next example, or the next statement, B, is the statement the door is not closed. You can't just insert the word not there. You can't say the door is not closed. It doesn't make sense. So let's think about what this statement is saying. The door is not closed. So right now the door is open. So what would be the opposite of the door is open? Closed. Yeah, the door is closed. So the negation of be or not be would be the door is closed. All right, and the next one we have a quantifier. We have the word none. So we have none of the tourists brought raincoats. So let's just jump back to our little table, remind ourselves what the negation of none is. So the negation of none, we could either say there's at least one tourist that brought a raincoat, or some of the tourists brought raincoats. So I'm going to do the second one just because it's shorter. So we'll say the negation here, not C, would be some of the tourists brought raincoats. Some of the tourists brought raincoats. And then the last one, I run less than Kara. So this is the one I told you that I think is the hardest one here. When you think of like what's the opposite of less than, you think more than. But there's another option that we need to take into consideration. You could run exactly the same as Kara. So you would either say, I run exactly the same as or more than Kara. A shorter way to say that would be, I do not run less than Kara. So this way, just a little bit shorter, and it encompasses everything. I do not run less than Kara. And that way it encompasses everything, and you don't have to write very much. I don't think I've put any questions like this on the test in the past, but if I did, it would probably be a multiple choice, so you didn't have to worry about typing in a long answer and then having to wait on me to manually grade it. So if I did something like this on the test, it would be multiple choice. All right. Now we're going to look at the 4 logic symbols. We've already seen one. We've already learned our first symbol. Next, we're going to talk about compound statements. Compound statements is pretty intuitive, pretty straightforward. It's just composed of 2 or more statements. So compound statements where you have 2 or more statements joined together using a connective word. These are the connective words and, or, and implies. And I'm just going to draw over these symbols just to make them a little bit more bold. These are very important. We're going to be using these symbols for the rest of this chapter. You'll probably have them memorized by the time we get to the end of the chapter from using them so much, but if you don't have them memorized, you may want to write them on your index card. So we have the symbol, it looks kind of like a little triangle with no bottom piece. That represents and. It looks like a little V, that represents the word or. The little squiggle, we already know that's read as not. That's then the symbol for negation. And then last we have this little arrow. That means implies. So compound statements that use these symbols all have like a fancy, they each have their own little fancy name. So I'll tell you what that name is, just so if you see that name, you're able to recognize it. So statements that are connected with the word and are called conjunctions. So statements that are connected with the word and are called conjunctions. Statements that are connected with the word or are called disjunctions. We already know that statements when you have the word, or with the word not, those are called negations. And then the implied statements, they have two names. We call it implication. That one kind of matches in with the rest of the words. But they also refer to this as a conditional statement. So we'll say implications, comma, conditional statement. And they're often written in the form if, then. All right, so statements that use this symbol, the little arrow, are often written in the form if, then. And I'll remind you of what these words mean as we go through the chapter. I'll keep reminding you that the and statements are the conjunctions, or statements are disjunctions, that kind of thing. So let's look at some examples. I have 3 examples from the homework, and I have one that I took out of the textbook, so we can practice using all of these symbols. Really, this is just preparing us for the next section, which, like I said, is about truth tables. So this is just giving us practice using these symbols before we go on to a more complicated topic, which is truth tables. All right, so this was kind of long. It says, use the following simple statements, A and B, to symbolically write the given compound statement, C. A is the statement, snow is falling. B is the statement, the sun is shining. And then C, that's the compound statement, is snow is falling and the sun is shining. So you can see it has that connective word in there, so that's how you know it's the compound statement. A lot of the statements that they use in this section will seem kind of silly, like snow is falling, sun is shining. But they're just simple statements so that we can practice using these symbols. So if the statements sound kind of weird or like really formal, don't let that worry you. It's just they're using these simple statements to give us practice. These are pretty easy, especially compared to truth tables. But all you're going to do here is you just take your compound statement and you just break it up into its parts. So statement C says snow is falling. That's the statement A. Then we have that connective word and, which we know uses that little upside down V symbol. So that's our connective word and. And And then we have the sun is shining, which is the statement B. That's it. So you could write the compound statement C is A and B. Now you'll have some examples sort of like this on the homework. I don't think you'll have to write this part on the homework, so just write this part. And you want to make sure and just be careful of a couple of things. First of all, make sure that if they're using lowercase letters, make sure you use lowercase letters. And all of the symbols here, these 4 symbols, can be found on the keypad. So all of these symbols can be found on the keypad in Hawk. So all those symbols are there. Technically, this symbol here and here are on your keyboard, but I would just use the ones on the keypad. The next 3 are off of the homework, so you should have something similar. All right, so I did one of each type. I did an and, I did an implies, and I did an or statement. It says use the given simple statements to write the compound statement, not B and A in words. Very good. I did not recently eat lunch. That would be the opposite of B. I did not recently eat lunch. What's this symbol mean? And I'm hungry. I did not recently eat lunch. And I'm hungry. So it sounds really formal and like, you know, this is probably not the way you would say it in real life. But again, these are just for practice. All right. If I had thought about this beforehand, I probably would have just used the same 2 statements for every example. That way you didn't have to write as much, but I didn't think about that until like yesterday. After I'd done this like 3 times already. All right, so here's the next one. It's similar examples, just a different compound statement. Use the given simple statements to write the compound statement. Not A implies B in words. A is the statement, my umbrella broke, and B is the statement, it is raining outside. We'll write this 2 ways. We'll use the word implies, and then I'll show you how you could use the if-then form. So we'll do one sentence using the word implies, and then we'll do one in the if-then format, which I think this flows a little bit better. All right. So what would be the opposite of the statement A? Yes, my umbrella did not break. My umbrella did not break, which implies Put the word which in there to make it flow a little better. My umbrella did not break, which implies it is raining outside. Now, if we were to write this in the if-then format, which, like I said, I think that just flows a little better. The first part's always if, the second part's then. So, if my umbrella did not break, then it is raining outside. Yeah, excuse me. So you can see why it's called a conditional. It's kind of like it's raining outside under the condition that if my umbrella did not break. So it's raining outside under the condition that my umbrella did not break. So that's why they're also called conditionals. All right, so we did an and, we did an implies. The last one we have to do is an or. Oh, and I need to remind y'all about the word or, so we'll do that after we look at this example. Same directions here. Use the given simple statements to write the compound statement, A or not B. Words. Now, they could both be negated, that's fine. We haven't seen any examples like that today. But it's okay if both of the statements are being negated. So statement A is, it is hot. And the statement B is, the ice cream is melting. So how would you say that, A or not B? How would you say that in words? Mm-hmm. Yes, it is hot, or the ice cream is not melting. All right, so what if I had put this on the test and someone had written this sentence that it said, it is hot or the ice cream is melting? Would that be correct? No. Why not? Yes. You got to negate that second statement, so you have to insert that word not there. All right, so let me come over here and talk about the word or. All right, so the word or can mean two different things. The fancy name for it is, there's what we call an exclusive or. Exclusive or an inclusive or. In this class, we will always use the inclusive or. So this is the one that we will always use in this class. So let me tell you the difference between the two. We learned back when we were talking about sets that if you had something like A or B, that means A or B, A or B, or both. So when we were talking about sets, we meant this element is in the set A, or it's in the set B, or it's in both. So that's the inclusive or. You're including everything. The exclusive or, if you had something like A or B, it just means A or B, but not both. So it's excluding the instance where it's in both. So in this case, the inclusive or, if we're talking about this statement is hot, or the ice cream is not melting. So that means it's hot, or the ice cream is not melting, or it could be both, it's hot and the ice cream is not melting. The exclusive or would eliminate that last option. So it excludes that last option, so it can't be both. So just keep in mind in the future that the word or in this class will always mean talking about A or B, A or B or both. Okay. That is everything for today. Like I said, it is very, very important that you watch that video. If you don't watch the video, you're going to be lost next week. We're not going to have a midterm. No. Midterm in this class, the only thing midterm will be important for is that is the last day to drop a class without penalty, or to drop a class and get a W instead of a WF. Now, I don't want any of you to drop, but keep that in mind for your other classes if you want to drop them. All right. Any other questions?